Share something with you. I know Duncan for many years. I once worked for the Department of Agriculture since 1998 when I met Duncan, and he was still as young as I was at that stage. So we come a long way, and I was in the Department of Agriculture as a pasture specialist until 2010. Then I started to do private consultation work in South Africa, Botswana, and Namibia for quite a number of years. And in the meantime, in 2014, I started to lease land in Namibia where we were farming on leased land. And for the past 5-6 years, managing a large-scale mega farming operation in halfway between Mafikeng and Vryburg, which includes about 33,000 hectares of cattle land, as well as backgrounding operations and a feedlot. So I really walk the walk of life, like they say. Duncan asked me to talk a bit today about grazing management. Now, he knows some of the grazing management things that have been done in the past. I've been involved with them, with a couple of people who are in the especially in the bonsmara industry. So yeah, I gladly share with you the lessons that we've learned. We've also learned we don't stand still. Droughts have learned us. We see we're currently, hopefully, just in a seasonal drought. Seen recently that Botswana had they say the driest February in the last 42 years. So we are quite in a dry season, and farmers already think back about the previous drought that we had, which ended in 2019, which was very devastating in Southern Africa. This current seasonal drought seemingly is quite tough, especially in terms of the countries who normally get more rain, like Zambia and Botswana, of course, Namibia. Seemingly the whole of Southern Africa is feeling it currently. But grazing management is all about how do you ensure that you have less drought to the farmer. Drought in nature doesn't necessarily have to mean drought to the farmer. If you do certain management things right, you can lessen the effect of a seasonal drought. In fact, if your management is correct, a seasonal drought like this should not really have any significant effect on your operations. Yes, if we get a second and a third year, then it will become a problem. Hopefully, and it looks like the forecasting shows that next season would be at least normal and probably above normal again. So we must just survive throughout this dry spell, and next season we will have a good year again. I think so. Farming. Why are we in farming? I want a few answers. Just a few to pick up your hand. Anyone? Why are you farming? Anyone? Why are you farming? We're all sitting here as farmers, but why are you farming? Yes. Exactly. It's basically to make a living. Love for land and love for all things is there, but it's to make a living. You can only make a living if you make profit. If you make a loss, you can't live, because then your debts will be more than what you earn. So it's all about making a profit and making a sustainable living in the end. It's probably a higher quality lifestyle than somebody in the city, but with much more risk. The risk of having your income halved in a drought year is much higher than sitting in town, and so it's a high risk business. It's really, farming is very high risk business, and that's why for financiers like the Land Bank, it's critical to know that a farmer has either a good mentor or is able to really run this business and mitigate the risks that there is to the largest extent, so that they ensure that their investment in your business is safe. Because if you fail, they fail. And then in the end, they will have to charge people more interest, because You know, interest rates has to be, if the risk is higher, they have to charge you more interest, otherwise they risk the sustainability of their business. Profitability of farming, or cattle farming, especially what we're talking about today, is how much meat of certain quality you are able to sell every year. That's what it's about. But in our extensive areas, which we are sitting here, which we have in Botswana and Namibia, this cattle is almost like a harvester. They just convert grass into meat. So in actual fact, you are farming with grass. If you have no grass, I promise you, you won't be able to sell a lot of kilogram meat. Because animals are not like plants who can live from sunshine and water. They need something to eat. They eat grass. And if you have goats, they eat bush. So it's all about converting it as efficiently as possible. But you can only convert grass if you have grass. If you have nothing, then there's nothing to convert. Then I promise you, you won't be able to sell a kilogram of meat. Now, grass farming, to really be a successful grass farmer, you need to know what makes grass to grow, what to do to maximize grass growth. Because if you can do that for your farm, I promise you can improve your carrying capacity, like the gentleman from the land bank say. They look at carrying capacity. So they're going to borrow you money and your farm has no grass, I promise you they will be hesitant. Because if I was in their position, I won't. Because I know those animals will die, so I will lose my investment as the bank, you know. So it's important for you to focus on grazing management, to focus on your carrying capacity to improve it. Because if the manager from the land bank goes to your farm and he sees there's a lot of grass, at least he knows one thing: those animals will have food. The second thing that they most probably will look into is water development, because animals can't live without water. So how good are you looking after your water? Because those things goes together. You can have the best farm with all the grazing, but if your water is not up to standard, your water development, animals will die, and whoever is going to finance you will have a high risk of financing. Those two is critical, for, especially in our drier parts of the world, like Botswana and this part of the world. Now, grass farming. Grass is just like human beings. They need resting somewhere. A grass plant just works like this. If you graze it down, the roots starts to die off, and the recovery of it becomes poor. So for that plant to really be productive, it needs also resting. And that's very, very, very critical. Now what, in free nature, before we can almost call it Western influence and things, before people decided to put fences around properties and all those things, and before they put drilling machines and drill water where there was not supposed to be water in nature, animals would track rainfall events. If you go in those, especially still in Botswana and those areas up northwest where that large game areas, you'll see that if it rains tomorrow, the game will all go there. So that facilitates resting in nature, because you'll also know that it doesn't rain necessarily at the neighbor. You get rain and the neighbor that's next side gets nothing, and 10 kilometers further it rain, you hear the guy had rain. So nature operated. The animals would move to the area where it rained. The rest would get a recovery time. And then, of course, fires also helped a little bit for them to follow it. But that's something that you have to manage. So that's how it operated, you know. So they would move after green spots and where it's raining, and the rest would rest. But now what did we human beings do? We drilled boreholes everywhere. So now basically we took that management, that self-management system which nature had in place, we took it away, and we put water everywhere. So now they go for the water trough, and there's no more natural resting. Now suddenly we need paddocks and camps and all those things to really manage. Otherwise they will be just everywhere, all the places, and you won't get proper resting of grazing. So the most important thing for grazing, it needs resting. And the longer you stay in a camp or an area, the longer it needs to rest. There's lots of research been done in the world and South Africa and everywhere, shows that if you graze a grass plant about 5 to 6 times in a season, it almost needs a year resting to recover properly. If you don't, the production of that grass plant in the next year will fall by 50%. So in other words, you're degrading the carrying capacity. So how do we improve carrying capacity? It means you need somewhere a piece of your land which you rest. You can graze it. You can graze it for a season, not full-time grazing animals always, but you can utilize it and come back maybe in 6 weeks or 8 weeks and come back. But then thereafter, it needs a proper resting period. And most of the research show if you can get towards giving it a year resting, full year resting, the production in the year after the rest doubles in dry areas, doubles. So apart from what you have there by the resting, you can cut it off, it will still produce double the grass than one which didn't get the rest. So that's so critical. That's the basic of grazing management. You need resting. You need resting after grazing. So you convert that grass into meat, but thereafter it needs recovery. If you don't, you just degrade the potential. So next year you will get half of the grass growth that you're supposed to get, and your carrying capacity goes down. In that way, there are farmers which, I'm telling you, in areas where there's not too much bush, can later stock 7 hectares per large stock unit. Whereas if you don't have proper grazing management, it can be up to 15, 16. That's how serious it can be. You can double the production on your farm if you have the right grazing management with the emphasis on resting. And the second thing for cattle farming, cattle do utilize bush, but there needs to be a balance. And interesting, if you go in some of these parts of Botswana where there's still lots of fires and so on, people who come from Botswana will tell you that those areas are quite open. The fires control, the bush burn back and the small ones burn back, and you can see fire. If you go, especially in the western parts of Botswana, there from Gansi onwards to the Namibian border, those sides which still gets a lot of fires, you can see far, there's very few bush. Because it needs fire, but not indiscriminate. It needs to be once in a while. And it can only burn if it was grass. If it was grazed heavily, it can't. So bush, if you don't manage your land properly and maybe have a fire once in a long period, eventually it will thicken and thicken and thicken, and you'll see where there's lots of, especially things like Mungana, that eventually there's no grass anymore. You just see bush, and that degrades your carrying capacity a lot. It brings your carrying capacity, it can go down later until 20 hectares to just have one animal. So bush, unfortunately, is something that we have to, if you don't have fires in places and there's no more bush, you have to control it. Either by herbicide, probably herbicides is the answer. That's what most of the commercial farmers do. They send for aeroplane or something. There's nowadays drones that you can do it. Put herbicide on the bush they come back again. It's not you kill them and it's gone. No, they do come back again. They will come back again. But it gives the grass a chance to get back. In most of those cases, you'll see that people's carrying capacity can easily triple. And that's maybe something the land bank can look into, especially in future financing. If you finance a farm, try to see if it's not possible, if bush is too thick, to make the bush control part of the financing package. Because you immediately reduce the risk of failure, I would say, by 200%. Because one thing that you'll guarantee by that is there will be grass. And you also at least ensure almost a doubling of carrying capacity for the next 10 years. So reduction of bush density is immensely important if you are a cattle farmer and you want to increase the carrying capacity of your land. It's really something that we must not underestimate. All the highly successful people who I've seen who was able to buy other cattle farms with money that comes from cattle farms is people who looked at bush control. Because it just enables him most of the times to double his animal numbers. And once you you are able to do that, you don't need more land for that. Immediately you are sitting with higher income and you can even afford to buy another farm. So it is very, very vital to look into that. If you have too much bush, you won't have grass. You can have, in very high rainfall years, you might have, but what it does, it's in a year like this year, you suddenly have no grass. And then you sit in problems, and you have to sell animals. When it comes in drought times like now, what is your, people always ask me, what do you do in a drought? What is the purpose? In my opinion, the idea in drought is not to try and see if you can sell all your animals. In fact, for the best survival strategy for a farmer is to see how many animals, and especially how many productive animals, you can take through that drought. Because if you sell them, you'll buy them after the drought at double the price. Those of you who had to do it know, after the drought you're going to pay double for that animals. So it means you should have a drought management strategy in place already. By saving grass again, by resting, so that you can go through a normal seasonal drought like this without a problem. Because if you have to sell animals in a year like this, then you will be in trouble if you get another dry year. Because we had a couple of good years now, so I don't think until last year most of us could complain. But now this year it's reminded us that there are things